And the last one, the last one that's tricky, but totally, that sort of depends on the company and their maturity. So at TDX and at Dreamforce, a lot of the questions I get, so first of all, the conversation is sort of pivoted. It's more around like, well, why do we need design and what's it for? And if I should have design. And what's awesome about what my team has been doing over the past year is that the conversation has pivoted. Okay. They're not really asking like why or if anymore. I just don't get that anymore, right? To the first 2 points, they've sort of been sold. They get it. Okay, they want to know how, and so okay, great. What are the learning journeys? What are the certifications? What are the modules? Where can I find designers? What does a job description look like? Like they just need the help, and this is easy for my team to do. We're like, great, well, we're going to do all that for you, and so that's super exciting, right? But what was happening just before that, and it still kind of happens, is it's like, well, do we really need to hire designers? What if we just skill up all roles on design? Like, can't we just make all admins better designers? Can't we just make all developers better designers? Can't we make architects better design strategists? And, it's not an either or. I mean, but right. Yes, it also depends. Yes, like, also. Are we dealing? Yeah, it's yes and. It's like, it's a yes and strategy. However, if I were forced to stack rank, am I going to prioritize the human that went to school to study design and then wants to work in the Salesforce ecosystem because they're in love with the ethos, right? Or and I love you, Kristi, or if I'm going to prioritize you that wants to learn to become a better designer, I'm going to put that designer just barely ahead. And the reason why I'm doing that is all the enablement and the career learning journey and all that I create for that human, you're going to benefit from as well. But if I have to fine tune it and I have to only focus on sort of the intersection of other roles and design only, that puts the person that went to school, if you will, or is an experienced designer, is proud to be a designer, marginalizes them, right? It doesn't give them a voice and an identity in our ecosystem. And let's just assume that we never, let's rewind a year and a half and we take out designer. We never did that. All we did was come out with more and more design enablement. That is a net gain of 0 humans to the ecosystem that could benefit all of our customers and partners, because they're not going to see career pathways, right? They have to squint and go, well, I can become an admin and I can exercise my design skills over there. I can become a developer and exercise my design skills over there. But if we flip the script and we actually roll out with a career pathway, which we did, and focus on design, they're going to see that. But then also, admins and developers and architects are going to take the same, curriculum, the same certifications, and the same. They're going to read the same blogs, right? And everybody benefits. So that's what. So to your point, it's a yes and, right? We need to do both. And I'll say one last thing is that this quote, sort of still sticks with me, and it was very early on in our research when we were developing with Halibut Flats the archetypes of design, which is kind of like a persona. They're just a little more vague buckets, if you will, and that's when we came up with strategist and UX designer. One of the quotes I got from an MVP admin was like, here's what I need you to do. I need you to enable me, upskill me, give me all the language, educate me, and help me understand the value of design, and hold me accountable for doing great design on my org at my company to a point where I can't do it anymore. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, to the point where I can't do it anymore, and I'm going to lobby to my leadership that they need to hire a designer to do this work properly, because I need to go back to doing what I was, like my day job, why I got hired here in the first place as an architect, right? Because if you think about it, we want to Kristi, I can upskill you on design. I can teach you all these new best practices and create the best design apps and all that, but that just takes time. And if you're going to do that correctly, it's going to take time out of your day. There's only so many minutes and hours in a day. But now, if you do that, you're leaving something else on the table that you're not doing as an admin, right? And so you can't do both, because now you're doing a 16-hour day job instead of an 8-hour day job, right? So there's a moment, though, where you can definitely upskill and have enough, shared language, shared understanding. And some of it you can start to sort of work into the way you do what you do, which is awesome. But there's a tipping point. There's a magic moment where you're like, all right, this is enough. I mean, we've all been there. Like, this is enough work now to do this and own this correctly that I need to lobby for a junior designer or somebody to just do this full time. And I'll manage that person, because now I know enough about what it takes to manage a designer, if you will. but I need to go back doing what I was, what my primary responsibility is. Or you go through a career shift. You become the designer and you put someone else where you were. Right.
It's interesting to think about. I'm trying to think into past roles. We did bring in a UX person at one point. And again, I think it's kind of and that was for our Experience Cloud piece. But what's interesting is part of what I remember about it is that he wasn't designing for Salesforce communities at the time to leverage out of the box pieces and build on them. And I think that's an interesting, right? I can see from both sides as the admin, just similar to working with developers, right? It's helpful if I understand what triggers can do and the difference between triggers and flows. That's not to say that I'm writing the trigger, right? I have enough knowledge to have those conversations to be able to, make those decisions and write the stories in a way that are helpful. But I'm not actually doing the work, right? Similar, it sounds to me, right? Like that there's design things I can learn. I can learn the basics of, the different layouts. I can ask users what they think, and try to make decisions. And I'm empowered to, if I build my own components when I do get dangerous and try and code things, which I used to do more in Aura, not as much in LWC, but I do have this design system that's already helping me. So things look consistent and seamless. So there is some that I can do, and again, it's not like you're coming to say that every org needs a designer, right? I don't think day one you're hiring a designer, but as your company grows, as you've got external facing tools, as you have more, internal users in terms of like if you're looking at hiring a trainer and looking at then it makes sense to me that like the user experience to me is a similar thing, because I think the admin has those build it and train people, right? But you may have people that are not as good in front of crowds or not as good at those explaining and breaking down things. So there's just like nuances to each of it that then having the influence of the other can be helpful. But and if they have to be the same person for reasons, it's not bad to have that knowledge, but really having it to then be able to hand it off to someone who does know all these tools and has read all the books and genuinely has passion and cares about it, I think is definitely exactly right. Makes sense.
You can hit the nail right on the head. It's a maturity. It's org design, it's maturity story, it's scaling. I don't mean maturity, I mean maturity as your organization grows and matures, things probably become more complex and you need to start planning for...
As you go from 30 to 300 fields, yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Well, that too, and then the size of your company and how in your org may or may not be getting more complicated in a lovely way, right? Like, with more integrations like that. And that is... and so like the trainer is a good example, right? Like, you may have somebody that has to side hustle as a trainer, but are they the right? Like, I would never. I'm a terrible trainer. I'm like a watch me. I don't always have the language to tell someone what to do. Just watch me, right? And that's not a great trainer. So, so having that sort of awareness and sort of self-awareness and empathy. Like, okay, there's a moment where you're like, all right, this is not. I'm aware that this new type of human is going to bring value to my org. And so don't get me wrong, like an admin, I've come across many admins who are very talented designers, and that is actually something we're also supporting. So if any admin out there listening to this wants to become a designer, we are here to help you make that career change. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say if you didn't go to school, I use the example as a designer, professional designer, as just a particular use case. We have like 6, right? That is just one of them. But we're here to support those that want to make a career change as well. And teaching that external designer that maybe have a degree on the wall, right? They don't need to be, to your point about you hired a designer, but they didn't know a whole lot about the design system, right? That is exactly the number one use case, if you will, that we are here to help make better. Because, these awesome, talented designers coming from other ecosystems or coming out of school, coming into the Salesforce ecosystem, don't necessarily need to be taught the basics on UX fundamentals and human-centered design, right? They went to school for that. But what they need to be taught is how to design on and with our platform. That's the hotspot. And so that's what we're going to hyper focus on, for that human. And the other way around is for the admin, for example, that wants to make a career shift. They don't need to be taught the fundamentals of really the Salesforce platform. They want to catch up on what the fundamentals of design are, right? And they want to work that in. And so we're kind of doing one of these, which is great, and super exciting.
Yeah, it's funny just to think back on that and realizing the amount of times I had to explain that it's not a mobile app, it's a mobile experience, or just some of the inherent things that it did. But once people see mock-ups and love them, then do we build custom pieces for this that then we have to maintain, and understanding the implications of that.
And sometimes you do. That there's a build it or configure it. I was gonna say build versus buy, but it's the same idea, right? There's a moment, and I think that
maybe you
is
are out
actually
of the box.
out of the box, or the opposite. And there's a decision to make, and that's part of what will be coming out in this relationship design philosophy that we're going to be rolling out later this year in practice and toolkit, is that there's a moment where after you come out of well, hold up, before we push a single pixel, let's talk about who we're doing this thing for, who are the stakeholders, what are the problems we're trying to solve, right? Do some prototypes, do some paper mock-ups, and this is way before, don't even bring an org into the room because I'm going to throw it out the window, right? This is just we're talking paper on the wall right here, if you can see my wall. And there is a moment where you actually, if there is an experience that requires you to customize it and it's not out of the box, but yet the customer satisfaction from doing that outweighs the amount of debt that you're going to take on to kind of keep that thing alive over release, sometimes you play that card, right? And so you have to make calculated decisions like that in service to your end user.
As long as you're doing it from an informed position, right? And not just because
don't do it haphazardly.
It's what you know how to do, that's
exactly.
That's I think is super important. So
there's a bunch of lovely articles out there on design debt and tech debt, and I can't remember it right now, but we can probably add them to the the appendix of this podcast. But there's a bunch of great stuff around. Do you haphazardly make that decision, or do you knowingly make that decision? There's a matrix of 4. I can't remember what the 4 things are right now, but it's an awesome way to frame it. And so those that are doing it haphazardly, if you will, are the most dangerous decisions, because you're making them from an uninformed position.
Right. When you set lots of things as important in your CSS, I learned that that's bad. Let's just say. So we've talked a bit about the role of the designer in versus adding a layer on the admin layer cake of designer, right? So if you do have admins who are interested in either just having this influence their current job or a transition, how do you suggest that they skill up on design, and should they, what are kind of the benefits of doing that?
Yeah, well, shocker. I think I know what I'm going to say. Go to Trailhead. But in all seriousness, our team has invested a lot in the Trailhead platform to ensure that the best modules are up there, the best training is up there, the certifications and all the things. So we have trails on Trailhead, both that speak to you, if you identify as a user experience designing admin, or if you're sort of curious about this new strategy approach that we're taking as an admin. So those are both on Trailhead, and we'll give you links. Smash the link button below. We'll give you links to that, and that'll be rolling out more. So definitely take that stuff. When we launched the role and the user experience career pathway last year, I was blown away by the amount of those that identified as admins sort of were really into it, especially like I said earlier, the upfront strategic, the human-centered design, the philosophy, a lot of that. And so a bunch of admins came back and, anecdotally to me were saying stuff like, this just helped me frame the discussions I have with my manager or my stakeholders better. I really appreciate all that. So right on the heels of that, Leanne reached out, and Jillian was like, and Mike, and we're like, holy cow, we want to we want to highlight design thinking in part of our annual Be an Innovator series.
Okay.
And that was great. And so I think that if you're a curious admin, go out there and check that out. There's a podcast that I did with Jillian, and then there's a 6-part video series I did with Leanne and Rebecca called Be an Innovator with Design. And we sort of go through sort of a fictitious use case or a simulation, if you will, over the 6 episodes, and how you can leverage design very fundamental design thinking sort of process to, customize a feature on the platform.
I do think
definitely check that out.
Yeah, I do think that's a really unique opportunity that admins have, that we have these evangelist teams at Salesforce that are literally interested in helping you do your job better, right? I don't know. I mean, obviously there's other companies and, that platforms that probably have the same thing, but just like you mentioned, you started doing something that you thought maybe was going to go one way. You get some admin interest, and then here's the admin relations team. Those evangelists are like, yeah, sure, let's talk about it, let's do it. And now we've got that content. Absolutely. So that you can plant that seed that, maybe I can go get the UX designer certification.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's been super exciting. I mean, since we've rolled this out, I mean, one of the things I probably should have did at the beginning was that the way we look at the design role is what we call a foundational role, or a core role, right? Meaning, again, to my point earlier about designers don't use Salesforce products unless they happen to work at a company where they have to log a call or whatever, right? They don't use it as a tool, right? But either developers and neither do architects, and some admins don't, right? They use it. They're foundational makers. They're what we call makers. So they make all the experiences that all the business users use, right? Sales managers, service managers, marketers, they all use the tools that their company licenses from Salesforce, if you will, as part of the day-to-day job, right? For the most part, right? But developers and designers and architects and admins, for the most part, are the ones that are, at Salesforce. Those same humans exist, right? And we're the ones that are designing and creating and launching these awesome products. But then outside of Salesforce's four walls, if you will, ISVs and partners and solutions consultants, they're using these tools too and designing experiences that the business users use, right? And so what's been awesome about this is that the admins reached out and are like, there's a lot of overlap. Let's do these awesome campaigns together. And we're working on one with the architects right now, right? And it's like, I call them the dynamic duo campaigns, and I'm going to keep saying that until it sticks, until someone in marketing
I'm here for it.
Yeah. Hashtag dynamic duo. You heard it here first, folks. Hashtag dynamic duo dreaming designers. So we're going to start seeing, long story short, you're going to start seeing a lot where the designer relations team is doing things in partnership with the architects and design relations. Because to my point earlier, it is so horizontal, and it is so, all the roles can roll their sleeves up and do some form of design in their day-to-day job. If you're a developer, there's design and code, and you're doing front-end design. There's design as an admin. We talked about that, and as an architect, there's a lot more strategy design being done, right? And so you're going to start seeing a lot more of that,
including the new certification.
Yep. So in depending on when everybody's watching this, at the end of May, it will be the new strategy designer certification that's going to be launching. So again, we're super excited for that. So be on the lookout for that. And then after the design strategy certification, we're gonna probably swing back, and we're probably going to keep pendulum. We're going to swing so we can support both career pathways. And we're going to swing back and do some more advanced, I guess you can call them more advanced UX architect level type curriculum and enablement and best practices, and maybe even a certification. Probably, to what my point earlier around builders, right? Because again, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? It's where a lot of design is being done with clicks, not code. That's sort of a hot spot right now. And again, it's admins and designers and consultants and business, they all kind of have their hands on those paintbrushes. So it's in our best interest to ensure that great design is happening in those builder spaces.
Okay.
Plus, it's also B2C, and anything B2C or B2B2C, if you will, to my point earlier, consumer mental model, very short patience, high expectation. We're going to want to ensure that anything gets pushed out really is the best that it can be.
Nice. I like it. Setting me up for success. I'm always here for it.
Yep. And we're going to bring back instructor-led design academy, instructor-led courses. So as, knock on wood, COVID starts relaxing a little bit and people want to get out of the house and squeeze into their pants and go
put on shoes,
go buy some new shoes, and go fly to another city and learn from an instructor. We're going to start having courses under the under the banner of design, if you will. So both hands-on sort of design strategy courses as well as UX focused courses. Personally, I learn better that way. Like different people learn better different ways.
Immersing in it.
Yeah, like you give me a bunch of text, fine, but I just prefer to learn from another human in the room, and then go to happy hour and have dinner and do it again the next day.
Well, one of the advantages of having an official Salesforce employee is that we can ask you safe harbor things. What do you see on the designer relations roadmap that you can share with us?
Well, a little bit of what I just told you, like the more advanced certifications specializing in UX, super badge. We're thinking about a SLDS super badge, and this is not a secret because we're about to put out the signal on social, if you will, for those that are interested in or have an opinion on what a SLDS specialist super badge should be.
Okay.
Right? If you're familiar with super badges, those listening for the first time, it's sort of like a simulation, right? It's a long form narrative sort of problem that you need to solve, and then but it's self-paced
and less prescriptive than some of the other modules that are kind of giving you the steps.
Less prescriptive to a point. There's still a computer checking your work,
sure,
because it's a super badge. But
right.
yes, absolutely right. So we're excited about that. Something sort of exciting is that you're gonna start seeing the Salesforce Designer Annual Survey. I know surveys are super boring to most people, but to me, I love them. But you're gonna start seeing this sort of annual, maybe even biannual, every 6 months, how you define biannual, survey rolling out, where we get to assess how design is showing up in our ecosystem. You might have seen a developer survey. You may have seen other surveys that the other relation teams do launch by /data. We're doing the same thing. And all of this feedback is really what drives me and my team. And, those of you might not know me from your neighbor because I might be the new kid on the block, but I do, if you do know a little bit about me, I take the feedback super serious. And we do take action on. Yeah, I try to respond to every single tweet, every single LinkedIn response and everything, and really try to close the loop and understand what's working and what's not working in the design ecosystem Salesforce. So this is a way at scale that we hope to get some feedback and really help steer our prioritization every year. So if you're listening to this and then you remember to keep a lookout for that when I ask you to complete the survey, please complete the survey. There might be swag in the future for you, so we're going to get into the swag. I know you all love your swag. It's a whole nother level.
I can see multiple stuffed animals right from where I'm sitting. So yes,
exactly.
I'll take it. I think it's really interesting. You mentioned taking it personally, but I think what stuck with me from earlier is you mentioned we deliver you this thing, but it's a platform, right? So as soon as you build the first thing, you're varying from that, and yet people have feelings about things across the line that aren't you things, but they're you setting others up for success with them, so they are you, but they're not the core pieces, especially with Lightning, which is a good thing, really, but that you can. It's not just fields related lists. That's it. That you've got so many more options. I blogged previously about something I saw in a presentation of Florida Dreamin' of, even when you create a new Lightning page, it defaults things for you, which presumably someone thought about, right? A you person type thought about, but
somebody on our team made that decision. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that's the best thing for me. Right. So, maybe the 50-50 split is better than this, 66-33. So, I don't know. It's just really interesting providing you as many options as possible, but also defaulting options, but also letting you custom, like so many people and scenarios to accommodate and, usability. Like, you mentioned earlier, how does this button look in a, the third versus half versus 2/3, and those kinds of things, which I'm happy someone's thinking about, because that's
and I said it earlier, like, hire a designer, or you can become a designer, or at the end of the day, the best design is a team sport, right? Like, the most dangerous designer is the one that sort of just works in their head and spits something out and then decides and then moves on to the next thing. So that's kind of like, I don't want to say that's the reference that you had to the designer earlier, but maybe that's kind of how that played out. But, it's a team sport. So you working side by side with the designer, just having that conversation together, and then maybe a couple other peers or stakeholders, someone that identifies as a developer or even like an end user, like you're going to have the most, equitable and inclusive and sustainable. What I mean by sustainable, like it's going to like it's going to stand the test of time. It's going to stand the test of time. A solution possible, right? And it's just having those backgrounds and viewpoints at the table is the thing that's going to safeguard you to ensure that that's your investment in the future of great experiences on the platform.
And right? Getting that buy-in helps then, like getting involvement in those decisions helps people support those decisions.
Yeah, because they're evangelize they walk away going, I had a role in that, and I'm proud of that.
I told them to move that field. And now it's easier for you, next person I'm training. It's the little things sometimes.
Well, this is also exactly why we, Salesforce collectively, and the audience relations team, why as much as we can, we bring in, our customers, our partners to help co-create all this stuff with us, right? Because we know, you all see something we don't, right? You're out there in the field, front line. We're kind of safe over here, right? Like, and then it's also that proud. Like, it is also a proud moment. Like, we want to share the successes, with you. So, I would never want to. Yeah, plus confetti. Oh my gosh. Did you read my Slacks? I was just having a conversation about confetti. I'm not kidding you this morning about Slack. Someone wanted to know if confetti was worked on the Experience Cloud platform. And I was like, I don't know. I got to check into that.
Let's see.
But anyway, and plus confetti, but we want to share that success. I mean, that's why we create the certs with our subject matter experts out there. That's why we create the career pathways with them. That's, So anyway, thank you in advance for anybody listening.
So, what we typically wrap up with on the show is a recommendation when you take an ad minute for yourself, something maybe that you've read or watched recently. I did warn you that this was a thing, but I forgot to verify today that you had come up with one. Are you ready?
I actually put it down in the. I put it down in the references. I didn't really know what ad minute was.
Yeah, shit. That's our attempt at a pun. That we take an ad minute. I like it. What would you recommend for people?
Yeah, I mean, if you were inspired by even just a few of the things I said out there, those of you who are listening or watching, definitely check out a couple articles. One of them is called "Designing the Designer Role," and if you're curious on how we got here from there, right? It's a little bit of a personal story, and I don't want to try to toot my own horn, but it does tell a bit of the backstory of the problems we were trying to solve, and eventually to where we are today, right? Prioritizing design in our ecosystem. So definitely check that out. If you are now at the point where I've convinced you and you're ready to sort of better understand what a designer is, I would definitely check out another article called "What is a Salesforce Designer?" And it sort of simply lays out sort of who they are, where they come from, what their jam is, and what they would do in a day-to-day job. And so definitely check that one out. And then finally, definitely check us out on Twitter, right? Myself at ampersand at Doti or at Salesforce UX on Twitter. And all of this is there, and we have a very attentive designer relations team hanging out there to just engage with you, answer questions, get you connected.
I love it. For me, I was just reading through the Flow in Slack post by the aforementioned Leanne Reimel as a follow-up to some, admin highlights from TDX. And I think it's definitely coming onto my radar, and the idea of making it easier and just in line with flow and other things that I'm already building, I think is really exciting. So
I would actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, I guess you can call it a safe harbor about what we're going to do next is all things designing for automation and flow is going to be a very hot topic in the next year to come.
Okay.
So it always has been important, but it's just sort of one of those things where it's just bubbling up and just more and more people, all roads are leading to flow these days. In automation, and so you're going to see a lot coming out of the designer relations team at various events coming up, and really helping people design the best automations, if you will, right? Like all different types, specifically in flow. So
awesome.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I'm glad that you confirmed my hypothesis.
Sneak peek. That's on my mind. So I am your use case, and yes, it is on my mind. Awesome. Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for joining us. Clearly, we could talk about this for hours on end, and I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully people will be, like you said, ready to get out in the world and meet some new designers such as yourself at upcoming events.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me, Kristi.